Good evening, everyone. This is Perrysburg City Council for October 18th. Thank you. Please, let's do the roll call, please. Sorry.
Mr. Fuller.
Here.
Mr. Coleman.
Here.
Ms. Materney. Here. Mr. McCarthy.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Van Hoosen.
Here.
Mr. Weber.
Here. If you're able, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. The minutes of council meeting for October 4.
Thank you, Mayor. I know we have not only those minutes, but the prior minutes for the public hearings. What I am going to do, if there's no objections, is approve the prior minutes for the public hearing with one adjustment for the September 20th one, in that it states that anyone can submit a written testimony when it should be those who've already testified. So anyone is replaced with those who testified. So if there's no objections with the two special meetings as well as the October 4th committee meeting minutes, I'll consider those approved.
Given that there's an amendment, do you want to make a motion or no? I mean, it's up to you.
If there's no objections, I
All
would
right,
say
that's
that.
fine. Okay, very good. Special reports, I'm not aware of any. Letters, communications, citizen concerns.
Hi, Deborah Bourne, 125 East Front Street, Perrysburg, Ohio. At the last council meeting, the city administrator stated that the proposed new government center would cost $14 million. I question if the taxpayers of the city of Perrysburg would be willing to pay that price if they were aware of this. The emphasis should be on adaptive reuse. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Administrative reports. I have no really report, but I have for consideration for council. This is a resolution that mirrors what Bowling Green and Teamacog have both passed regarding the transportation issue between State Route 23 between Columbus and Northwest Ohio. This has been a topic that has been on a lot of people's radar since the governor stopped review of the possible interstate between the Columbus and Toledo. There are a number of regional growth partnership and other business development entities that are supporting this type of action to make a statement. So I presented to the council for your consideration. I think it'd be a good idea to make sure that Columbus is aware that we believe we should have direct access to Columbus. So it's up to council for passage, but that's yours to consider.
Just you entertaining a motion now.
I actually need a passage of a resolution, but
Jan, do you want to? This is kind of highway service.
I mean, it could go to a committee if you want, but it seems to me that it's something that all council should consider, and we just kind of felt it could go
I can
right.
ask is anybody University of Michigan fan if we're trying to get easier access to Columbus.
Go ahead and move passage.
Yeah.
We can't. Okay. Jan's letting this to me out. I'd like to introduce resolution 88-2022 and move that it be passed. I guess I should allow for its reading by number of title only.
So we'll do a roll call on just the first part, and then we'll do for move for passage.
So introduce it and waive the readings?
Yeah.
Okay.
And move that to second and third readings.
I don't know if we do those on resolutions. I guess we do.
Yes.
Yeah, we do.
I'll waive second and third.
Second.
Smoothly done, will not do it.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Ms. Matroni.
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen.
Yes.
Mr. Weber.
Yes.
Resolution 88, 2022, a resolution urging Governor DeWine and the Ohio Department of Transportation to reconsider ending the Route 23 Connect study and in support of an improved highway connection between Northwest Ohio and the city of Columbus.
All right, then I move the resolution 83-2022 be passed.
88.
88? Oh, 88-2022 be passed.
We'll figure it out eventually.
The records will show it, no, that's.
2 for 2.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman.
Yes.
Ms. Matroni.
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen.
Yes.
Mr. Weber.
Yes.
Thank you very much. No other report other than Halloween is October 31st. City Administrator?
I just want to let council and the committees of council know that I'm still following up on information that's been requested at the last couple committee meetings, and it should be coming shortly.
Finance Director?
I have no report.
Law Director?
I have no report.
Thank you very much. Commander or President Council?
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a couple things. First thing, I believe that all of us have received a letter here regarding River Place, an issue with a tenant in there. So with that being said, I would like to make a motion authorizing the city and the planning and zoning director to issue a use permit to X Golf as a commercial recreation facility at the Shopford River Place. Included in this motion is to begin the process of adding commercial recreation facilities as a special approval use in C3 zoning to get that process moving.
Second.
Okay, discussion? I'm not quite sure I still don't quite understand what you're asking.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
neither do I.
Okay, so what the motion is authorizing to issue the use permit to X Golf so they can begin the process of going under the construction, and then requesting that we start the process as well to work on adding the commercial recreation facilities as a special approval use in C3 zoning. As I understand, as it is now, it is a special approval use in C4, planned business park and industrial, and this is just making the request that we start that process of making that change and then going to a special approval use after the fact, but allowing them the opportunity to get building out now, so it's not a 6-month process for them to start operating.
Okay, so just so I'm clear as to this, you're asking administration to issue a use permit for something that likely isn't permitted under the current code because we know we have to fix it. Is that?
That's pretty much, that we're going to work in the process of fixing it, but issuing it as we're fixing it.
I do not believe I have the authority to do that, having sworn an oath to comply with the existing and enforce the existing rules, but council is a pending motion, I guess.
Well, I mean, it seems to me you're leapfrogging over the planning commission, and I don't believe that's the appropriate procedure we should be following.
If you have any suggestions on some other solutions here to get this moving forward, because
I don't know, Jonathan, I brought my planning and Ohio planning zoning law book with me tonight to read before tomorrow night's meeting. But I know what you're trying to do. I'd like to see this project get moving as quickly as it can. I thought Brody offered some suggestions on how the approval and review process could be expedited greatly. But I don't know if we have the authority to do that or not.
I would also say, it, I guess, and I'm just hearing it now, but the whole issue of council authority being put aside, you have a process that was just affirmed in the historic landmarks where somebody did something and then asked for forgiveness. You're creating a potential opportunity for others to do the same, to say, well, I think it'll likely pass because it's a good project, but why should I have to wait? I think that's a real risk.
And I had an issue with.
Well, I guess before you say that, Corey, I don't think anybody thinks this is a bad project. I don't think anybody thinks that this is necessarily a bad idea, and I think that the administration has already taken, when it reached out to the person who was interested in the project, we said, wait, we think this is a good idea. We'd like to expedite moving forward, but we don't see where it fits in our zoning code that was created before these entities existed. And now that we know this exists, we think we have a plan to fix it. But that's gonna take some time.
Very good.
Yeah.
And I completely understand that. I saw the dialogue between our planning and zoning administrator Brody and Dave Council here, and I just kind of want to read this out. So part of the argument here is it falls into the commercial recreational facility, which I think, if you're looking at a singular category, is correct. I think I think that's a correct opinion. But Mr. Kinsel makes a fair point that there's 3 acceptable uses in C3 that better fully describe what this business actually is, and that's entertainment, sports facility, gym fitness facility of more than 5,000 square feet, a restaurant and retail business. That encompasses everything this is doing. It's a shame that all of those, which this could also fit under technically, is acceptable in C3, and the commercial recreational facility is not. And I don't view that as a problem that is Mr. Kinsel's. I view that as it's our problem as a city in our zoning code, and we need to do something, because you're right, everybody up here agrees this is a good idea. What we're potentially doing by not taking action is driving away a viable business in the city of Perrysburg and wasting potentially getting rid of a year of revenue for them. Because this is, my understanding is that this is going to be a facility that's going to thrive more so in the winter months than the summer. And I don't think we should be costing our business owners because of the lack of language in our code.
Well, I would just push, I understand your point, but if it complies, then this motion is unnecessary, because it could just be something that's worked out between the business owner and the administration, and if it needed to go to the planning and zoning committee, it could. The other part of that, you're assuming that the property owner did everything he could possibly do to make sure when he came to us, he had asked us in a timely manner. This is a sophisticated business who knows the rules, who actually has many businesses in Perrysburg and has run his operation for a long time, communicates with the planning and zoning office, communicates with council and the mayor on a regular basis about a variety of issues. It's one thing to say this is someone who didn't know, shouldn't have known, and now this sets up an unforeseeable consequence. This is a sophisticated businessman with a sophisticated business, move in there with lots of lawyers who can read the code as well as you and I and Tim or any other lawyer or Kate. And what they're asking for is forgiveness after the fact. I'm not sure I even have the authority to do what you're asking. My law director hasn't had a chance to look at it. I'm pretty sure I probably don't, from my understanding of what my abilities are. So, to whatever extent council wants to proceed, it can. But I'm a little concerned that we're setting a precedent for don't come to the planning and zoning office, do what you want to do, and then try and convince council to tell them we can fix it at some point in the future. I mean, I think that's a pretty dangerous scenario for a business that maybe we like this time, maybe we don't like next time, and then that guy says, or that gal says, you gave your friends a benefit, and I don't get it. I think we create a lot of problems potentially for the city and liability for the city that I really haven't even, just in 2 minutes, I've thought of. So
my response to that would be, I really think
what we're lacking is a tool to get these type of issues to the decision makers, because ultimately we can go through the planning commission, which we do on a lot of things, and we go, the problem is the bureaucracy, and it's exactly why people hate dealing with the government. We are all sitting up here saying, this is a good fit for River Place. It's gonna take us 3 to 4 months to allow this business to occur, even though all the people that are decision makers at the end agree that this should be an acceptable use. So why are we delegating that authority down a chain? So what I would like to see after this, because we don't have the tool in place, is if we see something like this, where it's blatant, everyone up here, everyone that I've talked to about this issue agrees that this is a good business for that. There's not gonna be objections to it. Why can't we take those issues on? So I would like to see the planning and zoning code changed so that we, as a council, can unanimously or through a supermajority vote, get these issues fast-tracked, because what we're doing is driving out viable business from our city because of bureaucracy. It's pointless. I get the procedure buffers a lot of things, and I get what you're saying about favoritism, but if we as a council want to take something on, well, because we can overrule the planning commission, we can overrule planning and zoning as a council. We have that authority. And right now, we're basically saying, no, we got to do this. And I get the intent there, but the cost is greater than it's worth.
I'm not going to respond to much of that other than point out that Mr. Kinzel could have avoided a lot of this, and he's sophisticated enough to know this, in my opinion.
And the city can create tools to avoid these too.
You know, I think this is precisely why you have a planning commission. They're non-elected officials. They're not elected officials like we all are, who run for re-election, and we are quote-unquote politicians. So here you're seeing, I'd say the precedent is a slight bit different than what Tom said. Someone goes to the planning and zoning office, they're told either A, you can't do it, or B, you can do it, but certain procedures have to be followed. Then they say, okay, planning and zoning, I didn't like the answer you gave. I'm calling off my buddies, Corey and Jonathan and Tim and Jan, and I'm gonna get it fixed. If I were on the planning commission, you did this, I'd resign. You're just saying, we'll ignore you, or we'll bypass you when we know better than you. I'm pondering, the reason I have the book is, I do want to look at a little bit of what procedures can be followed if you have a use that may not really yet be anticipated. I can't believe over the passage of time since the 60s, we haven't had new uses evolved that, you know, we didn't have the wisdom 10 years in advance to say, hey, there'd be something like, what was it, Al Gore, he discovered the internet or something, or that you couldn't have, you didn't know this in advance. Now it's here. Yeah, it may not have a really good fit anywhere in the code. Well, what do you do with that? That's the procedural question I have. To just whisk it to council and ignore the planning commission, and maybe in the end there's a way I don't know how you issue temporary zoning though, and tell a businessman, okay, you can do it for now, but
And maybe that's the solution, is
if it changes,
conditional approval based on.
you create your own risk. But I'm not prepared to go there tonight. I'm prepared to talk about it. I get everything you're saying. He wants to get up and running, but
I guess I'm prepared as a council person to support John's motion and say, hey, we as a council are going to try to put this through the processes we have, and we anticipate that it's going to be passed. And if the administration can issue a temporary permit or an acceptable use permit contingent upon the final outcome, I don't know whether the phrasing needs changed, but I just want to send a message that we as a council support, or take a vote on it, I should say, as a council support moving forward, knowing that it's not set in stone, maybe. I don't know. I'm looking for a solution, saying council's out of the way. We did what we could right now.
Let me ask a question, make sure I got this right. So Councilman John Smith proposed a resolution, motion, that would actually violate our ordinances. Isn't that basically what he's doing?
I'm not our lawyer, but I defer to our questions to our lawyer, but unless it's just a rhetorical question.
I don't believe that it is
Subjugate.
I don't believe that is the intent
A
of
workaround.
Councilman Smith.
Well, that's the way some
But
people
I
would perceive it.
would say that I do not believe that, I do not, as I understand the code, and I have not reviewed this, that city council has the authority to ask the mayor to not follow the code of the city of Perrysburg. I think that is problematic. There may be another solution to expedite this, then I am happy to work with planning and zoning and city council and planning and zoning committee tomorrow night on, but I don't believe that anyone can give the mayor the authority to say, we're gonna do this in the future, so it's okay to do this now. My concern being, I understand the majority here is saying, yes, we're gonna do this in the future. But weird things happen, and if you don't do it in the future, and you've said yes here, what do we do in the future when you don't change the code and the business is there? So that is my legal concern with the motion as presented.
Can we ask our zoning administrator what worst case scenario or best case scenario, what time, how much time we're possibly looking at it would take to go through the process?
Yeah, and I think I might start out by answering Tim's question, because I think it's relevant to this. There's 3 courses of action, and we've been following the dialogue. I've lost track of copied on those emails with Mr. Kinsel. I laid out a couple different scenarios for him. One of them is for him to acknowledge that this is properly categorized as a commercial recreation facility by definition. And that would go through the process here to amend the code to either make commercial recreation facilities in C3 districts either permitted by right or permitted by special approval use. We would have that on the agenda for the December 8th meeting of the Planning Commission. We would set a public hearing for not sooner than 30 days. That would take you to approximately January 8th in that ballpark. Then it's typically scheduled for Planning and Zoning Committee of Council, which you have the authority to waive. I don't believe that violates the code because that's a committee that you've all set up for your own benefit. And then at the following council meeting after, what would that be, after January 8th, you could pass an ordinance after the public hearing to adopt that. You could pass it by emergency, it would take effect immediately. The issue that this particular business is running up against is they need to build out the interior of their space. And Wood County will not issue them a permit to do that interior work until they have the occupancy permit from us. It's safety, checks and balances thing for us to make sure that somebody doesn't make a bunch of improvements that they're not allowed to use. So everything's going to be predicated upon them receiving that land use permit. And as I just outlined under that code amendment, that would be sometime in mid-January, they would start construction. Dave seemed to suggest that might be 60 days worth of construction. So takes you to February, March, end of March sort of scenario. So that's option number 1. Option number 2 would be to appeal to the Board of Zoning Appeals. And that would be, we had the October meeting, so the second Monday in November, whenever that is. He would have to convince the Board of Zoning Appeals that my interpretation of it being a commercial recreational facility is incorrect and that it's actually something else. The likelihood of that, I'm not sure. If the Planning Commission ruled at that second meeting or the second Monday in November that I was incorrect and that Mr. Kinsel's argument is more correct than mine, that following Tuesday, we could issue the occupancy permit and that would resolve that in, we'll call that mid-November. And the very last scenario is to make the claim, which Mr. Kinsel has already done in his documents, that our code does not properly define this use. My argument this entire time is the code does properly define the use. It just takes issue with the outcome of that defined use. That is a trip to the Planning Commission to convince them that we don't have something that reasonably accommodates this use already in existence in our code. if they determine that we don't have something that's reasonably accommodating to this particular use by definition, they are authorized to create a new category, which essentially starts process one all over again. So that might actually take longer because it's 2 meetings of the planning commission instead of 1. So I don't know if that answers your questions or brings up more questions, but
What was the determining factor between putting it in C4 as opposed to C3?
that was done before I was here, and I explained to a couple different people that Perrysburg has always had a very active, citizen-engaged planning process. The large one that everybody remembers is the P3, People Planning Perrysburg. Everything was done by committee, and there were people who had special interest in certain facets, of zoning codes, and for whatever reason, they chose not to allow that in that location. I had the kind of circular argument with Mr. Kinzel, as he said, we're the only ones that treat this particular use this way, so that's the reason to disregard it. And I said, it's not the reason to disregard it, it informs us all as we work through a process to amend the code. So it informs the local decisions that we should make, but it doesn't change the fact that local decision has been made years ago. We can't just look and say, well, Bowling Green did it better, Toledo did it better, so therefore that's how we're going to do it. But that can inform our process as we look to fix this.
So I guess what is the difference referring to like X-Golf specifically as a business? What classified, why did that go into C4 as opposed to going into C3? I guess I don't understand that.
I'm not sure I totally understand the question.
Well, so the particular use, like, and I don't have the code sitting in front of me, so they're.
Are you saying perhaps why would it be a
Why-
special code use in C4 and not C3?
Yes, why could X-Golf not be placed in C3?
Well, the land
Brody,
use.
I think I can answer what he's asking.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
The business area that this is trying to go into is zoned as C3.
Understand that?
So in order to make it C4, you'd have to go through planning and zoning and everything and change the whole business area to C4.
Where are we getting C4 from? Is that given the?
That's another form of zoning.
I understand that, but is that the characteristic that are we putting X-Golf in a C4?
It's a special approval, I think, for C4.
It could be permitted along, C4 is a highway commercial, so most of the frontage along State Route 25. It's a more intense use than typically the C3. The C3, I mean, a very good contrast to that would be, the car dealerships, some of the activity that you see along Echo Junction Road, those are very intense highway commercial uses versus something like River Place, which is more of a destination, shopping experience. So there's a hierarchy, perceived hierarchy in terms of intensity. So C4 is a little bit more intense. And again, I don't know, I don't see anything inappropriate about having a bowling alley or an arcade or anything like that inside River Place. So had I been authoring the code originally, I probably wouldn't have taken exception to that. But again, the community process, that's how it unfolded.
Is there any other discussion? I'm not sure.
So I just want to make sure I understand. I think the term is being used as like word salads, because words are being used in so many different ways. Why is this not a C3? And I know the shopping center is C3, but why isn't this business, why can't it qualify as C3? I just want to make sure I understand.
Well, it's probably more of a visual, and I passed it there to John.
That's over at Kevin right now, so this is over.
So my office, when uses come in and somebody requests an occupancy permit, we go through a process to say, we have this entire list of boxes that we can put these businesses in. And that's what you'll see on the left-hand side of the horizontal chart. So we've looked through all the definitions and we said, in the totality of this business, what is this business? And we've determined that, we've researched their square footage of retail space, their bar space, and we said, what is the essential function of the business? And it's a recreational opportunity. People go there for golf simulators. The byproduct of that is you could buy golf gloves or golf clubs or things like that, but that's a minority of the business. It's about 20% of the business. In addition to that, while you're partaking in the golf simulation experience, there is a bar, food, refreshment sort of component to it. So we're in a unique position to say, is this commercial recreational activity? It's obviously commercial, it's not non-commercial, it's a commercial. Is it a commercial recreational facility, per the definition I think I passed down to you? Or is it a bar? Or is it a retail shop because they happen to sell golf clubs? So we look at all uses in their totality and say, what percentage is really divided out to this? An interesting contrast to that would be if somebody came in with a movie theater. Would we say that they're a candy store because you can go and buy popcorn and M&Ms and things like that? Or would we say, no, you're a movie theater that sidelines and happens to do, sell candy? So we look at the overall impact. What is the majority, what is the purpose of this entire business's existence? And we have determined to put it in that commercial recreational facility. But maybe to answer your question, if we would have said this is a gym or a fitness facility, or it's a retail business, then it would be appropriate for a C3. But we are tasked with finding the most appropriate definition that meets that business. So that's a determination that I had made. In fact, Cody Rodi, our zoning inspector, made that determination, said, we've got a problem. I want you to review this and tell me what you think it is. And my words to him were, we need to interpret this as generously as we can, because there will be no exception to that, and I know this will be a big problem. And we went through that. I finally said, this is what I think it is. He says, this is what I think it is also. We spent time on the internet. We received letters from Mr. Kinsel explaining the operations of the business, percentages that go towards retail, and the bar square footage and all those sorts of things. So shame on me for putting it in that category to begin with and causing all of this, but I do believe that's the most appropriate category. Unfortunately, I disagree with the fact that it's not permitted now. And in my letters to Mr. Kinsel, I've told him that I would support and provide a recommendation that the code be changed. But that is not an immediate resolution to his problems, so he was not satisfied with that.
So if it goes before the BZA, will you be defending what the code says or whether it's properly classified?
I guess both. Yeah, I don't think you could do one without the other.
Well, it'll be Mr. Kinsel versus Brody in their interpretation. Right? So,
I mean, on things like that, we don't make a recommendation. When somebody challenges our opinion to the Board of Zoning Appeals, it doesn't make any sense for us to advocate for a certain position. We say, here's the decision that we made, and the burden is on Dave to convince the volunteer citizens of the Board of Zoning Appeals that he's more correct than we are.
so you're defending this?
Yeah, I mean, we don't actively engage and debate it. We just, they already know our position because that's the whole basis of the appeal.
Thank you.
Any other discussion?
I have one question.
Go ahead.
Is it possible to move the planning commission meeting sooner? To make this process? When I was with HLC, we had special meetings for someone that had was trying to beat the weather, had contractor lined up or something. They said, can we please have a special meeting to get this approval? And we went through, and they sent us all emails. We agreed, yeah, we'll all come in on that night. Help them out. Is that possible with the planning commission?
The short answer to that is yes. The challenge with this exact time of year is that the scheduled meetings for the planning commission, because of the Christmas holiday and Thanksgiving holiday, we always do a hybrid meeting. So it's always the last Thursday of the month. In November, we don't have a November meeting. We don't have the typical December meeting. So what we have is a December 8th meeting. So by the time that we get this out and advertise for 2 weeks, we have a meeting October 27th, 29th, whatever this next Thursday is. I lost track. By the time we advertise for that and bring folks in, we're going to be probably the end of November, and we're going to have a meeting December 8th anyways. So 2 weeks, could it be shortened? The answer to that is yes. Is it significant enough to satisfy the person we're dealing with? Not likely.
So I want to ask a question as well. You've identified this as a part of the code and use that is not sufficient. Or I should say, let me rephrase it. You identified a use that should be in this district. Is there any other uses that are not classified appropriately? I know I'm putting you on the spot on that question, but that may need to be expanded.
I guess your question assumes there's a right or wrong answer.
I'm not saying that there's right or wrong. Is there any,
In my opinion,
in your opinion, do you think there's some changes that we need to make, not just with this use, but within other uses within the commercial?
I think we saw that with the issue with Mr. Greg Ruffey and Extroversion. So that's at least one that I can tell you right now. Are there others? Well, there's 6, 7, 8 pages of those. To say that one of those boxes isn't incorrect, that'd be foolish to say. So yeah, there's others.
Because where my concern with this, and we can rephrase however we want to in this motion, is that we are going to drive away businesses. And for someone who is putting a lot of money into bringing a business, I don't care about the property owner or anything else. I'm looking at the business itself. I don't want to drive people away to not want to do business here, thinking that this is something that could be an issue. A lot of times when you're a business and you're coming in to a location or municipality, you don't know what you don't know. Regardless of the property owner or anything else, that business thinks that they have the opportunity to do work there, and there isn't anything that necessarily tell them that they wouldn't be able to go in there. Obviously, you're not going to put a business in a residential area. That just wouldn't make sense for any business. But if you see a commercial zoned area, especially a Highway 25, there's a lot of businesses that you would anticipate to be able to go in there. And that is something that I think is concerning, that kind of echoing on what Ford mentioned, is that there has to be some sort of recourse. When you see a business, if it looks like a fit, if you think it's a fit, it should be a fit, and we should be able to help them get in there quicker, not having to wait all the way until March to open when they could be opening in end of November, early December. And that's 3 months is 3 months of income that they're not making while they're still having a large investment in there. And again, this isn't necessarily a reference to just Colfax, because I don't know the finances of the individual, but there could be some mom and pop stores that 3 months can mean a big difference on how successful they're going to be the next 3 years. And so it's something that I think we really need to take a heavy look at in our code on what we can do to help these businesses and for business owners to see Perrysburg as a welcoming place for businesses. And if it's changing the motion to issuing the permit as an entertainment spectator for the facility, I'm willing to make that motion to issue the use it under that versus issuing it as a commercial recreation facility. And I'm willing to change my motion on that.
Before you do that, I just have a couple questions for you, Brody. And I appreciate the time you put into this, because I know it's been extensive. So we're saying this, and I understand exactly why you're putting in definition 45, commercial recreational facility. I'm going to name out the 4 other ones that Mr. Hensel named in his, one of them was just mentioned by him. So 67 entertainment, spectator sports facilities. Is it reasonable to, I guess my interpretation of the code is I understand why that is the best one it fits into, the commercial recreational facility, but I don't think it's a perfect fit. I think it's different than the examples that are listed. Not greatly, but we saw arcades, right, in my entire life. I haven't seen a Topgolf or these golf simulators and these, places like Reset. Those have popped up in the last 10 years, right? And that's probably, I'm assuming that's after this code was really designed. Is that fair to say? Okay, so is it fair to say that that doesn't fit perfectly either? That X-Golf doesn't fit perfectly into a commercial recreational facility? It's the best fit under our code, but is it a perfect fit?
Well, I think you have to read the definition, and you might get as many different answers as there are council members to that. But I think it's the best I have to work with.
Okay, so it's the best fit given the code.
Right, and do I think that someone could convince the planning commission to go through the process to create a new category based on a 90 percentile match with that business? they would probably say, this is close enough, they may agree that they should change the Ps and the Ss in the boxes. I don't know that they would, and again, I'm just projecting, they would agree to create an entirely different category. Because the definition, even if you take out the examples, but it does say including but not limited to, I think a reasonable person can read that and say, seems to fit.
Okay, now, same thing with retail business. So, and I know you named entertainment facility, but I want to go to retail business because I know they sell equipment, right?
Correct.
I believe. And could you argue that you're renting the simulator, the space for the simulator? Because, if I can get to there, I had it marked for, so retail business. Businesses involved in the sale, lease, or rent of new and used products to the general public. So this includes, or excludes animal services, business equipment sales and services, construction sales and services. It does exclude the portion of food and beverage. I saw that in there. But we're going by the percentage of the business, correct? Kind of on that analysis.
That's one of the things we look at, yeah.
So like, I guess what I'm getting at is, does this also fit, kind of, does X-Golf also fit into that mold of retail business?
To a certain percent. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean,
And
because that retail is certainly a tenet of their business.
okay. And then also, he names, and I'm not going to read everyone, I'm not going to paint everybody with reading everything, but you have entertainment, spectator sports facilities, gym and fitness facilities, restaurant, retail business. And every one of those is permitted in C3, right?
Probably.
Are all four of those, when combined as a whole, if you took all their definitions, probably more fitting of X-Golf than commercial and recreational facility?
It's not an unreasonable argument,
Okay.
by any means, but we don't issue permits based on multiple categories.
And I understand that. Thank you. That's all the question I had. So,
Just one last question. I'm going to piggyback what Mark asked. This is the 18th, the planning commission meets on the 28th. Is that long enough to put it on the agenda for October?
It's not, we had an advertising deadline, and that has already been advertised, so we missed this.
So what I will do is, first I'll make a retraction of my motion. I'm assuming that's the right process.
Yes, you are
Okay.
doing it
And
correctly.
then I would like to make a motion authorizing the city planning and zoning director to issue a use permit to X-Golf as an entertainment and spectator sports facility at the shops at River Place.
Second.
So, again, motion on the floor.
Yeah, discussion. I'm not sure that changes the,
Yeah, I think that does, that
That would make
changes.
it permitted use of
okay.
that.
Are we on discussion?
Yeah.
so
Yes.
this makes it, so basically you're telling the planning and zoning how to interpret the code. I mean, I'm just trying to understand, and I'm not making any, I'm just trying to understand what the motion is. You're saying this is the definition that applies to this.
We believe that this definition would be a better application.
I think it's just taking a stance on where we believe it falls. And then we can have discussion when we get there.
Okay, I'm still trying to clarify. So you're asking
That we're asking
the
to,
administration to define this business as council recommends. Council is deciding how something should be zoned or how something should be classified in our zoning code.
I think we made it clear that it's not, there's not really clear
Well, but
definition.
but you are defining it. You're instructing us that there are a number of choices. There are several that are very reasonable. You're telling us, saying this, for this project is this. Is that,
I think
I'm
it's
just
a
trying
fair
to,
assessment at this point.
okay. Again, I'm not sure I have the authority to do that. Having said that, because I'm not sure.
That is not an easy answer. The other one was an easy answer. I don't
Right,
know,
that-
to be
And
honest.
you're also then creating, I would also, you're creating, I'm not sure how this fits into the next time somebody has 3 definitions, they're all just gonna come here. I would bring my lawyer and come here and say, I got a definition, could it be one, I mean, that's really kind of a discussion for council, the administration just trying to figure out I'll speak thinking out loud. So discussion, and I'll go this way, just so we.
So I guess I have a more of a logistical question. You're the mayor, so Brody reports to the city administrator and mayor. I would assume the mayor is the boss as well.
He's my boss.
Okay. So if are you able to disagree with Brody's interpretation?
Am I?
Are you able to issue a permit because you believe it falls under a different classification?
I have never been asked to do so. It's never come up in the 10 years I've been here. I've relied on the planning and zoning administrator, whether it be Mr. Walters or the zoning administrator prior to him.
That would be overstepping your bounds too, recommendation.
I've always taken the administrator's recommendation, planning and zoning administrator's recommendation. But I've never seen this discussion take place over any particular
project.
Well, I guess
I'll
I'll just be candid. I know that the mayor, you're part of the planning commission, correct?
I am.
Have you ever voted against a recommendation by the planning and zoning administrator, or not accepted his interpretation of the code?
I don't know off the top of my head whether I have or not.
I can answer it in the affirmative.
I bet you I have.
Okay. So, and you're his boss's boss? Okay.
Well, I guess your point though is the planning commission is the proper forum to sort these issues out. And we have, and matter of fact, the administrator has said that the planning BZA is really could be part of the solution here. But the other part of it is the planning commission, the purpose of the planning commission, and the reason why the zoning code was set up that way, as my understanding is that if there is a legitimate concern about the recommendation of the administration, then it goes to the planning commission, and the planning commission is, in this case, and I think that the council should be made very aware of the quality of people we have on that board. We have very knowledgeable, professional, expert people who spend a lot of time and effort, and I'm very sure at least 3 of them, not including me, know the code better than just about everybody up here, and would certainly challenge Tim and Brody on their knowledge of it. So that's why that organization is successful. And I think that they have also, in this situation, would properly do their duty to inquire from the applicant on a number of issues. And that's why I would think that if they were to decide to vote against it, that would be, or to recommend the change, that would be their prerogative to do. And I think that's probably something that would be appropriate in this instance. In a certain way, if I were to say this is a good idea to go forward, I would in that instance be voting against what the administration is required to do, because their obligation as the city administration is to enforce the current standard. And the current standard probably didn't contemplate this, but you take all the facts and the totality and apply it as best you can. Now, I'm very comfortable that Brody has done his best here to try and accommodate the request. So, to answer your question, I think the process is better served by doing the recommendations consistent with the code.
I guess my own, and I don't know that I asked a question, but I was curious the logistics of if you had an interpretation, much like council is voting on whether we have a different interpretation of the code than our planning and zoning administrator, whether that would be enough to get the permit signed. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm just asking whether.
I think we have professionals for a reason. I rely on my lawyer. I rely on my planning and zoning. I rely on my city administrator. I rely on my finance director. They're the professionals here. I think that if we could find a solution, and I have not been asked by the applicant, has not reached out to me and spoken with me, so I'm not sure. But, you know, there's a lot of hypotheticals that can go into this discussion, and I'm not, any good lawyer knows you don't make any decision based on hypothetical. You rely on facts and what's been presented. And what's been presented right now is a motion, and what he's applying for is an application. So.
Well, it's not a hypothetical, but I get what you're saying.
All right. Kevin, do you have anything?
No, I'm a little frustrated that we can't make this happen sooner. We couldn't have, but we shouldn't be here discussing it. I think it could have easily been classified as something else. So. That's it.
I have nothing more to add at this point.
The first motion I could not get behind because I didn't think that would be respecting the process. This one, this motion is interpreting the use, because I think Brody admitted that this code was written long before this type of businesses even existed. And I don't think the code is clear enough to define that. And so I think I would be in support of this motion to accept that classification.
I need a clarification on what we're voting for. Would you repeat it, please?
I can repeat the motion. The motion is authorizing the city planning and zoning director to issue a use permit to X Golf as an entertainment and spectator sports facility at shops at River Place.
So this would send it, I have 3 problems with this. One, we're pretty much bypassing planning and zoning altogether and telling them to issue the permit. Is that not right? You just read that.
Bypassing planning and zoning as in
We're making the decision for them.
for the planning and zoning
Yeah,
department.
we're telling them how to interpret the current code. We're not giving them the chance to have the hearing on this.
We're also the ones who are responsible to write the code into, but pass the ordinances on there.
So if I want to open a business and I don't like this, then I'll just come to you guys. And why bother with planning and zoning?
Anybody can come to council for almost anything, honestly.
You guys are setting
I mean,
a
that's-
dangerous precedent and an unfair one that's a little bit hypocritical.
How's it hypocritical? I mean,
Because you don't, then why don't we approve the Huskies?
I voted for it.
I'm just saying, I don't agree with it for a variety of reasons, and those are the top 2. I think it's a bit hypocritical, because you're doing it for business. The average person walked in and did this, you probably wouldn't be approving it.
It's hypothetical. I will object to that because that is something that
And also,
Let's just talk, everybody make a statement, don't talk over each other, just, if Jonathan wants to, Jonathan can respond, but let's also remain a level of decorum here, which I have appreciated so far. So let's direct the other questions to the concerns, not to their council members.
my biggest concern, as I said, is setting a precedent.
And just for clarification,
Let's go down the list and then we'll come back.
Yeah, my reaction is just be careful what you ask for. You're gonna into this charge I hear all the time about being anti-business. I think that's a bunch of nonsense. As Brody said, we'll expedite the process, and we have done so in the past. I remember years in which we said at the Planning and Zoning Committee, we had office hours. We'd meet about every 2 weeks. When we have a business that needs help to move more quickly, we've done that, and we will do so in the future. And I wanted to explore if there's yet another way we can do that in this case. There may not be. They do even more, I bet. But I think to just jump over and assume the role of the Planning Commission and the BZA and to tell them we are the superior power. And if we choose to do so, we'll take decisions out of your lap. I think is an incorrect long-term decision for the city.
Mayor, you?
I'm really torn. I think, we're trying to defend a code that I think is antiquated, and we're responsible for not having properly written code. I don't know how we anticipate that, but that we're trying to defend something. Secondly, I don't know why this wasn't included in the Planning Commission this month, with as long as it's been around. So I'm really torn about this decision.
Brody, is there any way we can schedule a planning commission, special meeting of planning commission?
It would have to be, Heather's our scheduling person, but it has to be advertised for 2 consecutive weeks. And I know the Messenger Journal has interesting deadlines and all that sort of thing, so we can use another publication. Our meeting is the end of October. We could do one early to mid-November.
And why would, let's,
But then, the real issue here is the 30-day public hearing process. Because that's going to happen regardless. So that's a built-in 30 days.
well, I know, but the sooner we get that running, it seems to me that the planning commission, given the very opinionated members of the planning commission, I would think that we could at least reach out to them.
That's not something that we dictate to them.
Right, that would be the committee's right to choose, but I would think that we can reach out and, I can't promise for the planning commission, and anyone who knows the members of the planning commission knows that they certainly are an opinionated group, but the administration can reach out to them tomorrow to see if we can schedule something in November, which would start the 30-day, because then we could do it in December, and it would start it sooner.
Yeah, I mean, in all my emails to Dave, I had to give him known variables and the possibility of a special meeting.
Well, right, we'd have to reach out to him as well, but I would think that he would, we could start that process tomorrow morning, first thing.
Yeah, I mean, we'll certainly do it.
And I think we would, I mean, and that also goes to the notion that this administration or any administration in the state of Perrysburg hasn't been business friendly. But part of the problem here is you're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, and you can argue about whether it's a good or bad idea, but there's also lots of factors that go into how we got here, and our job is not to second guess what the business owner did or didn't do, but what the code says, and Brody's job is not to take the totality of the rules, but to take the rules as they currently exist, and you can't apply 5 things when really you're supposed to just, it has to be 1 criteria. So, the administration has followed the rules. The problem is the rules don't exactly fit. So then our job is to, well, let's find a solution. And we reached out to Mr. Kinzel and we told him the result, and we sent all the council saying, hey, you guys need to have heads up on this because we know this is a problem. So I would suggest that the administration will reach out to the planning commission. It is its own body, which I do not control, we don't control, to see if we can schedule a meeting in mid-November. I think that's a possible solution. They can come to council, and then the 30 days would start running in December instead of at the end of December. So,
Well, that's why I brought that question up.
we will try and we will do our best. I think we can get probably a quorum, maybe, but then Mr. Kinzel has to be able, the applicant has to be able to be present.
Be possible to table this and give them an opportunity to
Table the motion.
Table the motion and give them the opportunity to see if they can jump this up.
I didn't read Robert's Rules of Order with me today. Maybe I should have. But
If we table it, and let's say
we table it till
what?
Well, I would to that point. The administration has tabled numerous items for council, so people have a way to have time to sort through and do an additional investigation. This is the first time this has been raised to the administration. It's the end of the month, but we'll have a meeting in November. We'll know a lot more facts by November. If that's what you want to do in November, you can. But one of the things that council has repeatedly said to us is that people need to have enough time to sort through facts and get information. For example, one of the ordinances that we're reading tonight is the municipal building, and people said they needed more time. Well, the administration hasn't had time to look at even whether this is a legitimate thing we can even consider, whether it's the right thing to consider.
We're comparing $14 million project to a zoning thing. I don't know if that's apples to apples, but
Well, it's procedure.
I understand your point.
Yeah.
Like Barry said, I'm torn because I really want to respect the process here, the same way we did with HLC.
Well,
But I also want to give these business owners all the opportunities we can to make this happen in a timely fashion.
My point of clarification, if I can, and I'm just trying to understand the motion because it's a very unique motion, right? My understanding is all we are doing is picking which round hole this square peg is. And Jonathan's suggesting we choose entertainment spectator sports. And as a council, we can support that interpretation that Jonathan's putting forward, or not, through majority or minority, whatever you want to call it. But at the end of the day, it comes down to the administration to sign that permit. We're not giving a directive, and we can't. I
The
don't think.
motion was a directive. The motion was telling us to do something. It wasn't saying council things.
Oh,
Well, it's authorizing a directive, or is it?
Authorizing is,
So I would say that I wouldn't support that. This is going to make us make another motion. I don't think council should be making a directive as what the administration should do. I think what we should be doing is supporting an interpretation that may be other than what our planning and zoning administrator made. And the administration can follow suit in that. I'm sorry for not understanding that portion of it. But I think it gives a decent out to the planning and zoning and the administration to say, hey, you know what? If council supports that round hole, we'll support it too to get this thing going because we know where it's gonna end up. That's what I thought we were doing,
So why don't I just retract the motion, and of course, if you want to make a motion, however you see fit.
I make a motion for council to make an interpretation that X Golf conglomerate would fit into Perrysburg's planning and zoning definition 67 entertainment spectator sports facilities. That's it.
Well, second that. And we still have the conversation.
Now, does this-
so it doesn't do.
This is not telling them what to do.
Correct. It doesn't.
The administration can still say,
That is their job. This is, to me, this is on the administrator of the planning and zoning. It's just giving council support that if they want to classify this as an entertainment sports
And we're
facility.
not overruling-
That's what correct.
we're not overruling the planning commission by doing this.
Yeah, because otherwise, I don't think as council, we can legally
You're,
do a directive.
so,
The administration has the authority.
so you're randomly voting, or you're voting, let me just clarify.
I guess it's a little proclamation.
So you're stating, we believe that the proper definition of this project is A, not B.
Correct.
And so anybody who has unhappy with the planning commission or planning and zoning office can come to council and say, they say that this is vinyl and I say it's wood, or anything other provision, or maybe it's a zoning, just zoning issue. They can come to council and ask for council's blessing to tell the administration how to do its job.
I think the previous motion was doing that. My motion is saying, hey, this is an interpretation.
Okay, this is.
We're accepting this interpretation.
You're accepting the applicant's interpretation and end of story.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it seems to me the administration can proceed how they,
With the understanding that you may also be able to legally reject or accept Brody's interpretation or council's.
Or not.
and that doesn't, to me, that, I interpret it as we're not undermining our planning and zoning.
Correct.
Or our planning commission.
That's not my intent. I think giving a directive is not.
I think you are the ultimate administrative boss, and ultimately you could issue a permit under,
Right.
if you want. If that's a legal question, then yes. I believe that you sit at the top of the food chain, and
Right.
if you want to
Right.
say this is this, barring it being an illegal action, in
Right.
which case you and I are going to have a
Right.
different discussion.
Right.
Yes,
All
you
right.
can issue a permit.
All right, so we'll take that under advisement. All right, so that, discussion?
Well, just one final question. Apart from this constitutional crisis,
Sure.
are you gonna, is it your plan, Tom, this morning to try and expedite a planning commission meeting?
I think the best public policy course for the future of planning and zoning applicants is to get a planning commission meeting as soon as possible. And so we will endeavor to do that tomorrow.
I have a question as well. Do you plan to accept council's, should this pass, you plan to accept council's recommendation?
I will take that under advisement.
Okay, so ultimately the decision lies with you.
Ultimately, most.
If this passes. And it
Yes,
still does.
right.
Okay.
Which it did, with you, if you all called me at the same times or at different times and said, we think that this is we think that we can interpret the Passaic Way and zoning code, and this is how we interpret it, that's fine. And I think there is some potential precedent issues that very much concern me, but for all the glamour and excitement of this position, the responsibility is mine, and I will take that under advisement.
I just want to pose the option that I think the administration understands the sentiment of council, and that we give them an opportunity before next council meeting to kind of implement or not what we're hoping to see happen.
So are you moving to table this?
I'm just suggesting that's an option, because I think you hear
I hear what you're saying, yeah.
And then we aren't necessarily put in a position of overruling the planning and zoning. Because we're going to meet in 2 weeks.
I want to be clear, my motion is not to
No, I understand, but
overrule. Okay.
it's the message.
Yes, it's hey, I'm basically making the motion because I don't think there's any perfect fit in the code. And I don't disagree with where Brody put it, but reasonable minds could disagree on where it could have been classified. And quite frankly, our zoning code didn't contemplate it when it was designed. So I'm going to choose the interpretation that allows this business to happen because everyone I've talked to goes, well, this should be an acceptable use in this facility. So that's why I'm taking that interpretation.
But you have acceptable uses and special use, which is another whole thing. I think that's why the planning commission is set up that way, and when the zoning code process evaluates, because while there's permitted uses, there's special uses that require certain approvals, and while this could be a permitted use, it could also be a special use that requires certain permits. So those are the kind of analysis of the zoning code that the administration is going to take under advisement. So is there a motion table or Barry, are we?
I'm going to move mine forward for a vote if that's all right.
We're going to finish the discussion and then move on. If not, we're just going to vote. Okay.
I said mine.
All right. Use.
Yeah, I'm gonna clearly vote no, because it sets a precedent, and also, I think it puts an undue burden on planning and zoning to freely make up their mind on this issue.
Okay, or whatever, roll call.
Mr. Coleman.
Yes.
Ms. Matroni.
No.
Mr. McCarthy.
No.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen.
No.
Mr. Weber.
Yes.
Mr. Fuller.
Yes.
All right, so we have that motion on the table. And one more thing that the President Council report, so just only try to extend things longer. I would like to make a motion to move into executive session to discuss, to consider the appointment, employment, discipline, dismissal, investigation, and charges of complaints against a public employee.
Second.
Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Fuller.
Yes.
Mr. Coleman.
Yes.
Ms. Matroni.
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen.
Yes.
Mr. Weber.
Yes.
We're doing that now.
Yeah, we'll head down now. All right, I'll make a motion to return back from executive session.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Fuller.
Here.
Mr. Coleman.
Yep.
Ms. Matroni.
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen.
Yes.
Mr. Weber.
Yes.
All right, that will be the end of the President's and Council's report. It was the longest one, I think, in the history of the city of Perrysburg.
Finance and economic development.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I got a long one, so bear with me, everyone, please. The Finance and Economic Development Committee met October 11th. The meeting was called to order at 5:30 p.m. by myself. Committee members present, other than me, were Tim McCarthy, Jonathan Smith. Also present were Bridget Cabot, City Administrator, Kate Sandretto, Law Director, Amber Rathburn, Finance Director, Kayla Trago, Deputy Finance Director, and Steve Bronder, Income Tax Commissioner. Councilman Fuller was also present in the audience. After roll call, we approved the minutes with no objections, and then the request to declare items surplus. Ms. Rathburn stated that fire has 5 cardiac monitors that are no longer useful to them, It is requested to declare them surplus and to allow them to be donated. The committee agreed 3-0 to recommend this to City Council. Ms. Rathburn stated that there are also 4 cars from Public Utilities which will need to be declared surplus. All will be sold on govdeals.com. The committee agreed 3-0 to recommend this to City Council. In the Right Stuff software renewal, Ms. Rathburn explained that Right Stuff is the software that is used for employee scheduling and payroll. This is an annual agreement. Mr. Smith asked if it was an increase from last year, and Ms. Rathburn answered that it is a very slight increase, as last year the contract was just under $25,000. The committee agreed 3-0 to recommend this to City Council. The approval of some code updates, we tabled that till November. The approval of then and now purchases, Ms. Rathburn stated that these are purchases that were made before a purchase order was issued. There's money in the budget to cover them. The committee agreed 3-0 to recommend this to City Council. The request for the 2022 budget amendments. Ms. Rathburn explained that these are quarterly budgeted adjustments. Mr. Smith asked about the HR expense. Ms. Rathburn explained that this was for an assessment center for the open fire chief position. Ms. Rathburn also explained that the second list of budget adjustments are related to the new chart of accounts and new financial software. She explained that they are just moving budget amounts between categories so that the appropriate accounts are used going forward. These adjustments net to 0. The committee agreed 3-0 to recommend that to City Council. Next, we had talked about fees that are charged by the city to promoters of special events. Ms. Cabot presented a sheet listing neighboring cities and their practices for charging for city services for non-city events. It also showed how overtime rates are calculated by police and service. I had asked Christine Best to speak on the costs regarding the farmers market. Christine Best, Executive Director of Visit Perrysburg, is very proud of this event and values the relationship with the city. Ms. Best stated that for 24 weeks of farmers market, the expenses will total $48,986.02, which includes the additional charges from the city for police and service. Ms. Best noted that before the charges were added, the farmers market had always been a revenue neutral. And going forward, it is projected to run at a loss of $28,716.02 per season. She added that it is a lot of money to spend for a service that is not tied to the CVB's mission directly. She further explained that their mission is to promote tourism and business commerce in the city and the immediate vicinity. Mr. Smith suggested looking into an entity that could help take over the farmers market and the different parades and events happening within the community. I asked that this issue stay on the agenda for next month. The discussion of the 2023 budget, I asked if the budget could be discussed at the November committee meeting after the committee has had more time to review the figures, and requested that it stay on the agenda. Request to add an urban forester into the pay bands. Ms. Sandretto stated that the Personnel Committee approved a new position of urban forester, but they have to give finance a way to pay them if they are hired. They will be in pay band D. The committee agreed 3-0 to recommend this to City Council. And in a discussion of language for bidding requirements, I invited Councilman Fuller to present his research and findings regarding updates to the city's language for bidding practices, since the code section for bidding falls under the Department of Finance. Mr. Fuller explained how he believes the language could be improved to ensure city projects that are being funded by taxpayer dollars are being completed by the most responsible and responsive contractors and provide quality workmanship. Mr. McCarthy asked about the $25,000 threshold that Mr. Fuller referenced. Ms. Cabot explained that there are 2 prevailing wage thresholds, one for new construction and the other for reconstruction and renovation. Mr. Fuller stated that Rossford and Bowling Green are also potentially addressing this issue. Mr. Smith noted his concern about pigeonholing too much to only hire union employees. Mr. Fuller stated that the intent is both union and non-union, but he can look into that further. Mr. Fuller stated that his proposed changes encourage best practices in the industry. Mr. Smith is also concerned about this being cost prohibitive with the requirement to provide health care benefits. Mr. Fuller stated that he is uncomfortable not offering benefits to someone doing work on city projects, as they are an extension of the city. Mr. McCarthy suggested an internal prevailing wage ordinance. I stated that council will be discussing this further in the Service and the Public Utilities Committees. And we had the Finance Director's report. Expenditures over $5,000. Ms. Rathburn stated that the new format for this report will be coming next month, and there were no questions regarding the expenditures this month. Health Insurance Fund, Ms. Rathburn stated that it is still steady and hopes to have 2023 renewals out soon. The investment quarterly update, Ms. Rathburn stated that per the investment policy, she needs to update them quarterly on investments. And the Tax Commissioner's report, the review income tax collections, Mr. Bronder explained that tax collections are up from last year and have been healthy. They collected $2.1 million in September in income tax. Mr. McCarthy asked about the one single payment that has not yet been decided on by the state. Mr. Bronder stated that it is skewing the number somewhat, and we are up 13.5% without that payment. Mr. Smith asked if there are any issues with people working at home. Mr. Bronder stated that that has not impacted us in a negative way at this point. There being no further business, the meeting is adjourned at 6:38. Now you get to hear me some more. If there are no objections, I'll introduce resolutions for the surplus property together. And the resolutions for the software renewal and the then and now purchases I'll do together as emergencies. And then I'll combine the ordinances for the budget adjustments. And lastly, I'll introduce the code amendments separately.
Okay.
Here we go. I would like to introduce resolutions 83 and 84, 2022, and move that the rules be suspended to allow for their readings by number and title only, and to dispense with the second and third readings.
Second. Roll call.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Ms. Matroni? Yes. Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Resolution 83, 2022, a resolution declaring one 2009 Ford F-250 truck, one 2004 Dodge Ram 2500 truck, one 2004 Ford Crown Victoria, and one 2010 Ford Crown Victoria currently used in the Department of Public Utilities is no longer needed for public use or unfit for public service. Resolution 84, 2022, a resolution declaring 5 Philips MRX cardiac monitors currently used by the fire division no longer needed for public use or unfit for public service.
Thank you. I move that resolutions 83 and 84-2022 be passed.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Matroni?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
I'd like to introduce resolutions 85 and 86-2022 and move that the rules be suspended to allow for their readings by number and title only, and dispense with the second and third readings.
Second.
Discussion, or roll call.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Ms. Matroni?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Resolution 85, 2022, authorizing a renewal of the agreement with Right Stuff for the City of Perrysburg's payroll system and declaring an emergency. Resolution 86, 2022, a resolution to approve the now certificates in the amount of $60,938.04 as attached in Exhibit A for the City of Perrysburg and declaring an emergency.
I move that resolutions 85 and 86-2022 be passed as emergency measures.
Second.
Discussion, roll call.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Ms. Matroni?
Yes.
I'd like to introduce ordinances 53 and 54-2022 and move that the rules be suspended to allow for their readings by number and title only, and to dispense with the second and third readings.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Ms. Matroni?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Ordinance 53, 2022, an ordinance amending ordinance 54, 2021, previously amended by ordinances 4, 8, and 43, 2022 to amend appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures for the year ending December 31st, 2022, and declaring an emergency. Ordinance 54, 2022, an ordinance amending chart of accounts and declaring an emergency.
I move that ordinances 53 and 54-2022 be passed as emergency measures.
Second.
Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Ms. Matroni?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
And finally, I would like to introduce ordinance 55-2022 and move that the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only, and dispense with the second and third readings.
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Ms. Matroni?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Ordinance 55, 2022, an ordinance amending Perrysburg codified ordinances 266.15-2.
I move that ordinance 55-2022 be passed.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Ms. Matroni?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
The next meeting of the Finance and Economic Development Committee will be Tuesday, November 8th at 5:30 p.m. And
Thank you.
thankfully, I'm all done. Nice work.
Thank you very much. Safety Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Safety Committee will be meeting next Tuesday on the 25th of October at 6 p.m.
Thank you. Recreation Committee.
Thank you, Mayor. We did have a meeting held on October 11th. It's called Order 644 by myself, due to the prior meeting being running a little over. Thank you to the Finance Committee. Everyone was present except for Corey. Also present was Bridget Cabot, as well as Kate Sandretto and Rob Ross. We did approve minutes. We talked about the Park District grants. I'll read through this one as this is on the agenda here. Ms. Sandretto stated that each year the city applies for 3 grants for Wood County Park District. Less than $5,000 grant requested the purchase of 4 additional Riverside Park trash receptacles due to the increase in volume. In the grant between $5,000 and $10,000 is a purchase of 8 Woodland Park picnic tables, 6 traditional and 2 ADA compliant to replace the aging tables. And for the grant that's in excess of $10,000 is requested purchase, or to put into the grant, purchase of sunshades for Rivercrest Park over the 8 fan bleachers. So those are for where the spectators sit at the 4 fields to protect those individuals from the sun. Mr. Smith noted that Pratt had come up with some suggestions for future grants, finding needs in the park, visiting them as often as due. No objection. This was recommended to Otis City Council. We had several citizens that came in to discuss about having the municipal tennis courts named on behalf of Mr. Alan Ravo. I know that is still a conversation that is happening internally. We also heard from Ms. Fleming regarding the pickleball courts with some issues with the time and the limits, and I know that the administration is also looking at that as well. We had a conversation about when the playground replacements are going to happen at bicentennial municipal and woodland parks. We had a couple of individuals come with Missions International of America asking to see if they can come in to take those down and repurpose them. I know that is a conversation, again, that the city is having internally, and we'll have an update on that one. An update on the river bike path, that they're in stage 1 of the plans, which are due on November 4th. A conversation on Davis Overlook on the zoning of that to see if there is any appetite to make that a full park. At this time, there's no movement on that. We had park donation conversation about setting up a system and program regarding donations within our recreation program. Again, we're having that conversation. I think we might have some information coming in the future recreation committee to ensure that we're applying by the code of the law, if I remember correctly. Next, we had a discussion of the usage of city-owned field on athletic fields. Ms. Cabot provided a list of all the fields within the city and who was using which fields during which times, day slots. So that was nice information about possibly using our rec program system on that, as well as conversation about possibly lighting up some fields that are in non-residential areas in an effort to allow for longer usage. And another business, Prac had a suggestion for our summer rec program that we include officials as a program, so high school kids or older kids might have an opportunity to be officials at some of the youth sporting events where they struggle to find officials, and I can speak to them personally when I had to be the rep for my daughter's soccer game. Our next scheduled meeting is going to be November 8th at 6:30 p.m. With that being said, I do have that resolution for the grant to propose. So I would like to introduce Resolution 87-2022 and move the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only and dispense with the second and third readings.
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman.
Yes.
Ms. Matroni.
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen.
Yes.
Mr. Weber.
Yes.
Resolution 87, 2022, authorizing the city administration to pursue grants through the Wood County Park District in the amount of $41,448.26, and if awarded, authorizes the acceptance of grant proceeds and declaring an emergency.
All right, I move that Resolution 87, 2022 be passed as an emergency measure.
Second.
Discussion.
Just real quickly, it's 3 receptacles. That was my mistake. I apologize. The legislation says 3 receptacles.
Okay, so it's not 6
It's not 4.
or 4, what, okay, that was 6 picnic tables, wasn't it?
Yeah. Sorry.
Sorry, we still need them down there, Riverside.
So the resolution is correct.
The resolution is correct. The minutes are correct about what was said, but not actually was.
All right, clarification, any other discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Weber.
Yes.
Mr. Fuller.
Yes.
Mr. Coleman.
Yes.
Ms. Matroni. Mr. McCarthy.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen.
Yes.
All right, that is the end of my report.
Thank you. Planning zone.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have no report. We meet tomorrow at 5:30.
Thank you. Personnel.
Thank you, Mayor. No report. We meet next Tuesday, the 25th at 5 p.m.
Thank you. Public utilities.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have no report. Next meeting is October 26th at 6:30 p.m. Thank you.
Been a long day.
Thank you. Service.
I have no report, but I would like to introduce Resolution 82-2022 and move that the rules be suspended, allow for its reading by number and title only, and dispense with the second reading.
Just to
This is a
introduce
second
it.
reading.
Yeah.
You don't want to dispense with them?
You don't want to dispense.
Oh, the third reading.
No, we don't want to dispense with third
We're
reading.
just having a second reading.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, second.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, all right.
That's what I said, so you don't hear that.
But I'll second that if that's what it
All
is.
right,
I would like to introduce Resolution 82-2022, move that the rules be
Yes.
I'm stopping right there.
The rules.
Yeah, right. Rules
No,
are
be
suspended.
suspended
Stop speaking.
To
to allow for its reading by number and title only.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Second.
roll call.
Mr. Fuller.
Yes.
Mr. Coleman.
Yes.
Ms. Matroni.
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen.
Yes.
Mr. Weber.
Yes.
Resolution 82, 2022, accepting the proposal and authorizing an agreement with the Collaborative Inc. in an amount not to exceed $155,000 for the first phase of the new municipal building project and declaring an emergency.
Anything else?
Nope, that's it. Oh, we meet October 26th at 5:30.
Any other business come before this council?
We will not meet before there's, let me pull it up on my calendar.
Election day? The next-
No. I'm sorry, I know everybody wants to go home. It's First Responders Day. Friday, the 28th, and I would like to just commend our first responders.
Very good.
And early voting is now active, I believe. I was at the courthouse today, so.
Any
I'll make a
other?
motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Okay, no objections, we're adjourned.